A $40 million superyacht suddenly vanishes off the coast of Sicily. Claimed to be unsinkable, the Bayesian now lies at the bottom of the ocean, protected by naval special forces both above and below the surface. Today, we begin our investigation as we dive into the unsinkable superyacht. Hello everyone, I want to welcome you all back to the channel and a big welcome to all the new subscribers. Welcome to the dive team. My name is Sicily. I'm a commercial diver with over a decade in the industry and thousands of working dives. I've performed many underwater inspections and I've also been involved in a handful of very large salvage projects. This will be our first video on the Bayesian, so stick with me because there's a lot of information to cover, but this information will be critical as we move forward. At this point, the Bayesian has been on the seafloor for about 2 months, so we're going to go over some of the reasons why it's still down there and some of the salvage obstacles that they may be facing. Anchored off the shore in Porticello, Sicily, the Bayesian is seeking harbor for shelter while weather passes. It's a celebration for Mike Lynch, also known as Britain's Bill Gates, who just spent the last decade fighting accusations from Hewlett-Packard, whom he sold his company Autonomy to in 2011 for $11 billion. Fast forward to May 2023, Lynch is extradited to the US and is forced to post a $100 million bond and remained under house arrest. In March 2024, Lynch's criminal trial on 16 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy begins in the US federal court in San Francisco. Now back in June, the San Francisco trial concludes with the jury finding Lynch not guilty on the 15 counts of wire fraud or conspiracy to commit wire fraud. His co-defendant and former Autonomy VP of Finance, Stephen Chamberlain, is also acquitted on all accounts. Now, August 2024 is where things take a turn for the worst. On August 17th, Chamberlain is struck by a car while out jogging, later dying of his injuries. 2 days later, on August 19th, while Lynch takes a trip on their luxury yacht, the Bayesian, filled with family and friends to celebrate a court victory, it is struck by a downspout in a freak storm, capsizing the vessel just off the coast of Sicily. They didn't even see it coming. So Mike Lynch and his partner Stephen Chamberlain spent over a decade fighting this massive court case worth billions of dollars. They're found to be not guilty, and 2 months later, within 2 days of each other, they're both no longer alive. That is crazy. We can put our tinfoil hats on later, but for now, I want to look into the design characteristics of this vessel, and we need to figure out why it sank. So this guy, Giovanni Constantino, the founder and chief executive of the Italian Sea Group, which owns the Perini Navi shipyard where the superyacht was built, has defended the boat's construction and blamed human error for the sinking. So he claims that the Bayesian was one of the safest boats in the world and was virtually unsinkable. He says that the passengers reported something absurd and that the storm came unexpectedly suddenly. He says that's not true. Everything was predictable. Ask yourself, why were none of the Porticello fishermen out that night? The disturbance was completely readable on all weather maps. It was impossible not to know. A Perini vessel survived Hurricane Katrina. You don't think it could survive a tornado like this? So as soon as this happened, instead of sending his condolences, he actually just went all offense, like very aggressive offense, threatening lawsuits, threatening to sue the widow of Mike Lynch, his wife and the owner of the boat. This guy's just been acting like an absolute entitled nutcase this entire time. So yeah, pretty crazy. So if this vessel is so unsinkable, then why is it now lying on its starboard side 50 meters deep on the ocean floor? The Bayesian was a feat of engineering. Constructed in 2008 and formerly named Salute, the sailing superyacht is a 56-meter, 183-foot long vessel. What made this vessel so unique? Well, it had a 72-meter, 237-foot tall aluminum mast, the tallest in the world at its time of construction. This mast pushed the boundaries of aluminum mast engineering, earning Perini Navi, the manufacturer, awards for best exterior styling for a sailing yacht, best interior, and it was also a finalist for best sailing yacht over 45 meters at the World Superyacht Awards in 2009. The Bayesian was designed to comfortably carry up to 12 guests in 6 suites. She was also capable of carrying up to 10 crew on board. The crew lives on the boat. They're constantly maintaining the vessel, cleaning it. It pretty much needs to be ready at all times. I have dived on many mega yachts, and it always shocks me how much disposable money these billionaires have to afford a full-time crew, plus all the contractors they need to hire just to keep the boat in tip-top shape. Now, the hull is an aluminum hull and has an aluminum superstructure, and it has teak decks. She comfortably cruises at 12 knots, reaches a max speed of 15 knots, and has a range of up to 3,600 nautical miles from her 15,000 gallon fuel tanks, and her water tanks store around 3,700 gallons. And here we're just getting a nice tour of the inside area. I'm going to pause here for a second. So this area here is on the back deck, and these sliding glass doors, according to the yacht report, E Sysman does a really good updates on the Bayesian, but these are sliding doors that can slide open, and it's been known that these doors will slide open when the boat lists to one side. You have to lock them, but it's really an inconvenience to have them locked, so they will slide like in rough weather. So just keep that in mind. That's going to come up later. Now we're just looking at the interior here. This is a large entertainment room or living room area in the boat. I'm sorry if not all the nomenclature is correct. I don't spend a lot of time on these big yachts like this. Most of the time I'm either working on the water or in the water. Beautiful big dining room here. Now also keep in mind, I want you guys to just visualize this vessel is on its starboard side right now. So it's laying on its right side at the bottom of the ocean. So look at all the tight quarters. So imagine trying to navigate this when you're disoriented, it's dark, there's water rushing in, and there's objects flying or floating all over the place. Now here's a look at the bridge. We have some dive footage that is going to show this later. But here's the bridge, here's the helm here, the big captain's steering wheel, the throttle controls here. Just keep an eye on that. And then we got this door over here. Keep an eye on that door because that's going to be important later. We're going to look at that later. And but yeah, this is the bridge. This is where the captain's at and where they're going to be steering the vessel from. And here's just another look from a different angle here. So these steps right here, just keep in mind. So we're on the main deck level, and these steps go down inside. So just remember that, because we're going to come back to that later. Just remember these designs here, and these steps especially here. I want you guys to just remember those. We're going to come back to that later. It's all going to tie in later on in the video. And those are those steps coming down all the way down from the main deck. Those steps lead outside there. Again, just look at the tight quarters in here. So just imagine this boat being on its side here, and you having to swim or fight your way out of this boat as it's sinking. It's going to be a pretty difficult task, especially if you're up forward and you have a long way to go to make your way out of this boat. Now, maybe the most important feature of every sailboat, no matter the size, is the keel. In simple terms, the keel is the underwater fin that helps keep the vessel straight, sort of like the fins you see on the bottom of surfboards. So it acts as a counterweight, lowering the center of gravity, and without it, sailboats would all simply topple over and sink. In fact, many sailboats, the bottom of the keel is the heaviest section. In many smaller cruiser-sized vessels, the keels are often made out of lead or cast iron. Again, they do this to have a strong counterweight when sailing so that the boat can recover quickly and right itself. So without a keel, the sailboats would have a much lower angle of vanishing stability, and it would be simply unable to right itself. So if a gust of wind hits the sail, it's able to right itself, and it's able to stay afloat because it has that counterweight at the bottom. So now the Bayesian has a retractable keel, which means it's similar to this keel here. So it's essentially it's on a hinge, and then it can swing down and swing back up. So now if a keel is so important, it's so important to have that counterweight. Well, why would you want to have a retractable keel? Well, Like many sailing super yachts, they need to have the ability to bring the yachts into port for fuel, goods, services. The issue with this is that many of the ports are relatively shallow for such a large yacht. So the chances of these sailing yachts running aground are actually quite high. So it's actually a quite common solution to have this retractable keel. The keel can tuck up into the hull. So the Bayesian had a swing keel, but there are also keels that come straight up, and these can be on very small vessels. These can be on huge ships. I recently dove under a 230-foot research vessel that had a retractable keel, or centerboard as it would be called, and it actually tucks up inside of the hull. And I have some dive footage here I'll show you of me actually diving inside of that big void in the middle of the ship. It was pretty crazy. So it's not that uncommon, and so as you can imagine, it reduces the overall draft or overall depth of the boat. It reduces, in the Bayesian's case, it reduces it from a 33-foot draft down to a 13-foot draft. So it saves about 20 feet and adds much more clearance so they can get into these shallow areas. Now, when you retract that keel and tuck it up into the hull, it reduces what is called the angle of vanishing stability. The AVS is the angle at which a sailboat will no longer stay upright and it will capsize. It's essential for engineers and sailors to measure and know how stable a sailboat is. A boat with a higher AVS will spend less time upside down before righting itself. For example, a boat with an AVS of 120 degrees, if this is 0 degrees, it's going to be 120 degrees. It'll actually dip below the water line and usually right itself within 2 minutes. Now, these are just some typical angles of some common like sailboats that are out there. So like a typical 35-foot cruising sailboat has an AVS of 120 degrees. Contessa 32 has an AVS of 156. Half tonner has an AVS of 120. Now, the Bayesian's angle of vanishing stability was around 90 degrees with the keel lowered. So with the keel lowered, with that counterweight down, it's 90 degrees. And with the keel raised, it was about 75, which means theoretically, even with the keel down, as soon as the mast touches the water, it's game over. I'm gonna show you guys a quick clip from the Yacht Report channel. This is E Sysman's channel. He does fantastic updates on the Bayesian super yacht. He's always got the breaking news when it comes to this. He's always doing deep dives. He's got connections with the news outlets. He's going to touch on the angle of vanishing stability. He can explain it far better than I can. So listen to him here for a second.
Now, another page also shows the this information here, which is the stability, the angle of vanishing stability, which shows what the vessel could do keel up and keel down. 73 degrees with the keel up and 87 degrees with the keel down. Now we'll remember that Mr. Constantino said if the keel had been down, then they would have had a better chance, which is probably true if the keel had been down. Now, and then it also shows us here, it says that there's 50 tons of ballast in the keel. Now this is the main deck of the yacht. This is something we asked the Italian Sea Group if we could have high-resolution copies of the GA, which they didn't respond to. But they've circled all of the hatches and openings of the vessel on that deck where water could have entered the vessel.
The next important number that we need to consider is the downflooding angle. This is actually the first time I've heard of this. The downflooding angle is the maximum angle where the boat can lean over without taking on water through portholes, vents, dampers, etc. The downflooding angle on the Bayesian was only 45 degrees, only 45 degrees on that with that large mast. Picture that. So this would have to be just calm glass water for me to be comfortable on that vessel. At 45 degrees, the water would then enter through the engine room vents and dampers. You know, the windows that you see here are sealed. They have glass, of course. The water can't penetrate those. You're not able to actually open those. All those do is just let light inside of the vessel. Now on deck, there are large stairways back here. So remember those stairs that I pointed out to you guys in the beginning of the video? Those stairs lead down to a large area in the lower deck of the vessel. On top of that, there are the sliding glass doors that we know can slide back and forth. I mentioned that earlier as reported by the Yacht Report. So imagine if this vessel had laid over on its side. Well, it's going to be taking on water in the engine room through these vents here. It's going to be taking on water through these stairways leading down into this lower area. And then potentially, if those sliding glass doors are not locked and dogged shut, which is typically an inconvenience, so they're not going to be, well, then those sliding glass doors are going to swing open. One of those sliding glass doors is going to swing down. It's going to slide down if the vessel's laying on its side. And then water is going to rush into the main cabin. Once this vessel leaned over and it started taking on water, it was nearly impossible to stop, assuming that's what happened. Now, there are some watertight doors that would essentially create large air pockets inside of the vessel. So even if the boat was taking on water, there should be enough buoyancy internally to keep the boat afloat, even if it was unable to right itself. Now, the issue with this is the doors must not only be closed, but they must be locked and dogged, as we call it in the maritime industry. Now, what we do know is that this vessel was hit by a waterspout. And so I'm just going to show you guys a clip here, which is going to illustrate what a waterspout is and what it would do to that vessel.
They are sometimes seen as threatening funnel clouds, a ghostly spiral of wind skimming the sea surface. These eerie columns of rotating air are known as waterspouts, commonly defined as tornadoes over water. Like many forces in nature, waterspouts can be both beautiful and dangerous. They've been known to overturn boats, damage large ships, and put lives in jeopardy.
I don't want to get too lost in the investigation to where we forget about the reality of things. People did pass away on this vessel, so our condolences to them. So, of course, we went over Mike Lynch and his history. Tragically, his daughter, Hannah Lynch, she was just 18, just had been accepted to study at Oxford, tragically passed away with him as well. Jonathan Bloomer was the chair of Morgan Stanley International, and his wife Judy tragically was with him. Chris Morvillo was a partner at Clifford Chance, who represented Lynch in a criminal fraud trial. So I believe that this was Mike Lynch's lawyer. I believe that's who that was. And then Chris's wife, Nita Morvillo, and Ricaldo Thomas was the yacht's chef. He actually was found outside of the wreck. There was 15 survivors, and he was found outside of the wreck. Tragically, he was found floating on the surface, and the rest of the survivors were able to get to an emergency life raft, get it inflated, and they were able to get rescued by a nearby vessel, Sir Robert Baden Powell. I don't know if you guys know of Harrison Okene, but he was working on a ship in South Africa, and he actually survived in a sunken ship for 2 days because he was inside of an air pocket. So I think since then, whenever we lose people underwater, well, we always think that there's a possibility that maybe they're surviving in an air pocket. Harrison Okene actually went on to be a commercial diver, and now he's a dive supervisor. So it's a pretty cool full circle story for him. Now, these divers here, this is the Vigili del Fuoco. These guys are the Italian fire department, essentially the Italian fire brigade, and they're diving down, doing the initial inspection to do hopefully a rescue, but they don't know what they're going to find. So they're anticipating a rescue. They could unfortunately be doing a recovery, and most likely doing a recovery. So that's what these guys were being sent down for. Now, after that, the Italian Coast Guard, I believe, this information is very difficult to, first of all, find. There's not a lot of U.S. Headlines or U.S. news providing coverage on the Bayesian, which is why I'm always checking the yacht report for updates. When you do find information, it's in Italian. So I really have to try and figure out everything. I have to use Google Translate and try to figure out all this stuff. So there's a lot of effort that goes into this. What happened is the Italian Fire Brigade, these guys went down, did a recovery. It's pretty typical for just like us here in the States, for the fire department or the police department, depending on your county, to do recovery dives like this. Now, since this happened in the ocean here off the coast, well, the Coast Guard is going to be involved. So now the Italian Coast Guard, they are sending down ROVs, and they're sending down their divers to inspect the wreck, document their findings, and help kind of come up with the salvage plan. And then on top of that, they have Navy Special Forces that are there protecting the wreck. And then also they're sending down their version of the Navy SEALs down to the wreck to recover certain hardware and other things like that. But these guys here, the fire department, that's where those are the ones that went down and recovered the bodies. Now it says that these divers are battling 10-minute dive windows. So we have to try and make an educated guess on the type of equipment that they're using, the type of gas that they're breathing, and why they're only limited to 10 minutes. So this is from the Italian Coast Guard. This is actually the Italian Coast Guard. So I believe that they also dove on the wreck and they sent down ROVs to inspect the wreck because they're going to be in charge of everything and they're going to oversee the investigations that are carried out. And because it happened on their waters, so they're responsible for everything going on here with this wreck. So, but it also says that the Italian Special Forces divers are to comb through sunken Bayesian superyacht for clues. So the Italian Navy's secretive COMSUBIN unit are combing through the yacht for any electronic devices that might offer clues as to why it sunk, as well as checking to see if any doors were left open on board. A close source to the investigation told the Times, the investigating magistrate has asked COMSUBIN to investigate so they can check the statements made by the crew of the yacht. So that's what the special forces are going to do. So the COMSUBIN unit from the Italian Navy, those are the Navy SEALs of the Italian Navy. Now another thing that those COMSUBIN divers may be looking for are 2 hyper-encrypted hard drives that may contain MI5 secrets. So that may be something that they're trying to recover as well. Now, why are they trying to recover all this information and gather all this information? And why don't they just raise the vessel? Well, think about it. When the vessel's laying on its side, they have to first right the vessel, get it upright, and then they can float it. When they do that, there's a good possibility that some of these hard drives and other things may fall out of the vessel. That's number one. Number two, electronics will corrode pretty quickly in salt water. So before these get too damaged and they're unable to recover any data from these hard drives and cell phones, things like that, they need to recover those before they experience too much corrosion from seawater. So I actually translated the COMSUBIN acronym to English, and essentially it's the Divers and Raiders Group Command. If any of our viewers speak Italian, if you can let us know what that means, the Tiseo Tessi. I'm sure that's like a motto that they use. But yeah, they're Divers and Raiders Group Command. So they dive and they're pretty much, I think that's a really cool name to have for a special forces unit. Like, we're raiders, like we show up, there's nothing that the bad guys are going to do about it. So I think that's kind of cool. Okay, so it's being widely reported that the wreck is at 50 meters. So 50 meters is 164 feet. So I'm going to show you guys some dive tables, and it might get a little bit confusing. I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible for you guys so we can try and figure out what they're doing down there, because it's been 2 months and we know that the divers have been going down, but what are they doing? Why is it so difficult? Why is the boat still down there? And what are the challenges that they're having to face from a diving perspective? Okay, so remember that headline that we just read, and it was being widely reported that the Italian Fire Brigade, those guys only had 10 minutes of bottom time. Now, this right here is a dive table from the U.S. Navy Dive Manual. We are going to be referring to this in our investigation. Why? Because I couldn't find any information on the Italian divers or the Italian Fire Brigade, what they were using. And two, the U.S. Navy has a department called NEDU. We have the highest respect for them by far, more than anyone, because they have been around since 1927. It stands for Navy Experimental Diving Unit. They are the ones who really tested out, who really pushed the human body to its limits and beyond. They figured out what the body can handle in terms of air, when they need to breathe mixed gases, which mixture of mixed gases, what's safe, what isn't, all these symptoms that are present, the ascent rates, how slow a diver needs to come up, how long he needs to decompress, etc. So by far, we have the highest respect for them because they not only provided safe working limits, Navy and commercial divers, but also recreational divers. Okay, so I'm actually going to teach you guys how to read some dive tables from the United States Navy. Now, those divers from the fire brigade, it was widely reported that they only had 10 minutes of bottom time before they had to leave. So they had a very short work window down there. Why is that? Because if you look here, so it says that they can spend 10 minutes maximum before they have to do surface decompression. That's SUR-DO2. So surface decompression on pure oxygen. So what that means is that if they spend 11 minutes on bottom, if they spend a second over 10 minutes, they have to come up to the surface, get on top of a barge, and hop inside of a hyperbaric chamber, which is going to complete the rest of the decompression for them. So that's why they only had 10 minutes. We're also assuming that they're diving on air. So we're just paying attention to this top line right here. So they have 10 minutes on bottom maximum. When they leave, it's going to take them 5 minutes to get to 20 feet. So they're going to travel 150 feet. They're going to ascend 150 feet. They're going to stop at 20 feet and stay there for 6 minutes. They're going to allow their body to catch up and get rid of all that excess nitrogen that's inside of their bodies and allow all that to off gas. Then they can complete their ascent. Now, assuming they're at 170 feet, they have an ascent rate of 30 feet per minute. So it's going to take them to get to 20 feet. It's going to take them 5 minutes. Now, when they get to 20 feet, they're going to sit there for 6 minutes. So their ascent time from the time that they leave bottom to the time that they come up to the surface is going to be 11 minutes, which is the 5 minutes plus the 6 minutes of decompression stop. And then it only takes another 40 seconds for them to get from 20 feet to the surface. So this is also very important. One thing I want to cover here is Martini's law. So Martini's law is a rule of thumb that compares the intoxicating effects of alcohol to nitrogen narcosis. Now, nitrogen is a toxic gas. A lot of people don't realize that the air that you and I are breathing right now is 21% oxygen, and then the rest is mostly nitrogen. Now, as you go deeper, you're taking in a more dense pressure of that gas, essentially. So you're breathing in more oxygen, but you're also breathing in more nitrogen. When you're breathing in a higher concentration of nitrogen, you will start to feel some narcotic effects. It usually starts around 50 feet. It'll start to feel like having a martini on an empty stomach. And then every 10 meters after that is similar to having an additional martini. So the deeper you go on air, the more you're going to feel those narcotic effects. It's a very fun feeling. It's very euphoric. A lot of people laugh. The pressure also affects our vocal cords. So we start to get like a Donald Duck type voice, and where we are like having a high pitched voice and it's a little squeaky. Even if you have a scuba regulator in your mouth, you can hear it when you're just kind of humming and laughing and giggling and stuff like that. It's a very fun effect, and alcohol doesn't even compare to it. There's no other drug that compares to it. It's a very fun feeling that you get when you're down there. The issue with that is when you are working, it makes it very difficult to concentrate because it also impairs some of your motor skills. So like these firefighters are down there, we're assuming that they're breathing air. That's not really going to add up if it's any other gas. But the challenge that they have is that they can easily get disoriented, get lost, have difficult trying to recover someone, things of that nature. So we just have to keep that in mind during our investigation here when we go over all the diving information. Now, I said it before, I'll say it again. It was very difficult to figure out what type of dive equipment they were using down there. Okay, so this dive footage is exclusive footage. This is the newest footage we have of the wreck. This is from Quarta Repubblica. It's a media outlet over there from Italy. You can access this, but you have to use like a VPN, an Italian VPN to watch the footage and stuff. When I say it was difficult to get a lot of this to put together, this information for you guys, that's putting it lightly. So before I play this footage, I just want to point out a few things. We can clearly see that these guys are not wearing those bright orange suits that the fire brigade was wearing. If I show you guys here, it actually says Marina Militare, Marine Military, pretty much is the direct translation, I think. Now, one couple things I want to point out. He has a GoPro here in a waterproof case. It's got an orange lanyard on it. That's going to be very important. We're going to see that later in the video. On that tray, he's got two grip handles right here, and he's got two very bright lights on him right here. The type of the dive equipment that they're using is surface supplied dive equipment. They're going down with two divers together. This guy has a full face mask. This is a Interspiro Devator. It's very similar to US Navy MK20. And I'll show you guys that in the dive manual, in the US Navy dive manual here shortly. If you're wondering what this thing right here sticking out of the side of the mask is, well, it's called an ambient breathing valve. And so pretty much on the surface, when you're on the boat, to conserve air, you can put the mask on, and then you can have that valve open so you're breathing in ambient air, the fresh air all around you. And then when you get in to hop in the water, you close it, and now you're breathing air straight off of the tank. Now, a couple other things here. This right here is his backup regulator. That's in case his main regulator fails. This yellow hose is a surface supplied hose. This is coming from the dive boat. So like I said, these guys are on surface supplied. This is coming from the dive boat. This right here is a manifold. And there, you can't see it, but there's a hose that goes behind his back that goes to two tanks, which you guys will see here shortly. This little knob is connected to those tanks. So if he loses his breathing gas from the surface, he'll turn that knob open, and now he's breathing off of those tanks. And essentially, he's pretty much on scuba, and it's time to go. Now this manifold here splits off, and this hose right here actually comes back around and goes into his mask. So this is his regulator right here. He also has another hose that's going up around his shoulder, and that's going into this little device right here. This is an inflator and deflator. So on his vest, he has a bladder that he fills up with air, and he can also depress a button and let air out. If you guys remember the first video that we did on the Ocean Gate Titan, we went over Boyle's Law. Well, the deeper you go, the air in that bladder is going to get smaller and smaller, so his buoyancy is going to get reduced. So the deeper he goes, he needs to add air, and then he can maintain his neutral buoyancy. So he's not going to, otherwise he would sink. And likewise, when he's coming up, the air is going to expand inside of that buoyancy. Inside of his vest, that air is going to expand, so he needs to depress the button and let some out as he's going out. A lot of you, if you are like scuba divers or familiar with dive equipment, you're going to know all that. Now, what I don't see on this diver is a camera. So there's no question in my mind, the diver that we're looking from, the POV that we're viewing this from, is a live feed camera. And he has a GoPro, but typically when they bring down a GoPro with bright lights is to document and get clear video and images, because most of the time these live feed cameras, they're just not of the 1080p or 4K quality yet. They may say 1080p, but usually in most circumstances, the equipment that's readily available is not crystal clear, such like a GoPro would be. This item right here is going to be a pry bar. They're using this to jam open doors and break locks and bust open doors, things like that. Now this device right here hanging from the chain, This is most likely their downline, so they're going to have tools hanging from here. When they're going to be salvaging some of the items, they're going to clip those onto here. It's also extremely likely that this is going to be where they're going to perform their in-water decompression stops. So we talked about that on the last. So we talked about that when we were reviewing the dive tables for the Italian Fire Brigade. Those in-water stops, usually you have a line or something to hold on to. That's probably where they're going to be doing it, is right here. Okay, so here you can see the wreck in the background. Now, a lot of these clips, they just kind of cut from clip to clip. Keep an eye on this rope right here, because I'm going to show you guys some equipment, and we're going to be able to identify what this is. So this item right here, this, I'm pretty sure, is going to be a battery for what they call a canister light. So a canister light is a canister light is a very high-powered light, which typically it has a little handle on it, and it sits on the top of your hand. You guys are actually going to see one here shortly, but it has a little grip, so it just kind of sits there in your hand, so you can kind of work with your hand, and you can have bright lights. This battery, it looks like it's kind of dangling, or it kind of came off and he's trying to adjust it. But this is going to be the battery, and usually it mounts on your hip. It has a short little cable, and that goes to the light. Okay, so now this diver is getting ready to enter the wreck. Here are those two bottles that I was telling you about. So these are his bailout bottles. Now, he only has 2 lines going up to the surface. One of these is going to be a breathing hose, and I believe he only has voice communications. The live feed that we are seeing is from the tender diver, the in-water tender. What this is called here is, both for salvage divers, military divers, commercial divers, it's all the same. This is called a penetration dive. So this diver is going inside of this wreck, and anytime you're going inside of something, there needs to be an in-water tender. An in-water tender is required to make sure that this diver doesn't get fouled on anything. So now he's entering the wreck. Remember that stairwell that I was showing you guys earlier in the beginning of the video? Well, he's entering into that stairwell right now. And the diver continues to tend him and feed him hose as he gets further and further. Now the in-water tender is supposed to be positioned outside of the wreck. He's not supposed to go inside, but it looks like here in a later clip that he actually does, which is, honestly, it's kind of quite concerning. So now they're using that pry bar that I was mentioning before, and I'm stealing this from the Yacht Report channel, but here you can see the fire extinguisher sticker. So this is most likely a locker for a fire storage or fire hose, something like that. But inside of here, it's possible that they may have some electronics like hard drives or something like that. Here we can see a hammer in the background, which is most likely from the divers, a little sledgehammer. And this right here is a scissor jack. This, I believe, we'll have to look at that shortly, but I believe that they're trying to pry open, they're using this jack here to pry open some of the doors. So you guys can see here, this is the canister light I was telling you about. So now we are entering the control room. So remember earlier when I showed you guys the control room in the helm there, when they had these throttle controls and everything? This is what we're looking at now. We're in the control room where they would be controlling everything here in the engine control room. So there's a device here. This might be a hard drive, but it looks like they grabbed that. So if you listen closely, you can hear him talking to the top side here. I'll turn the volume up for you guys, but he's talking to somebody and they're responding. He's pretty much asking like, hey, like, is this something that I should grab? And I'll turn the volume up for you guys here. Okay, so now what we're looking at here is they're jacking open this door right here. So this should be one of the watertight doors, and they're trying to get access to the engine room. This is the engine room here. How do we know it's the engine room? Well, I'll show you guys in just one second, but they brought down these blocks with them, and I'm assuming that they brought this down in a duffel bag. We'll see why here in a minute, but I believe they brought these down in a duffel bag. They most likely had like a counterweight to help kind of just sink these pieces of wood. And then they have a scissor jack, literally a scissor jack like you would use in your car. I don't know why they didn't use a hydraulic bottle jack. It seems like it would be much easier to operate. And over here, this is going to be a very short snippet, but these guys are pretty much using a these guys are essentially using like jaws of life. Have you ever seen firefighters use those to like cut open car doors that you can't get open, things like that? Well, they're using this in a similar fashion to help pry open some of these doors, and it actually has like a little handle kind of pump on it, so you can actually kind of pump it manually. And so you don't need any sort of like power pack or anything like that. You don't need hydraulic hoses coming from the surface.
Cosa è accaduto allo yacht che tutti consideravano inaffondabile e perché hanno perso la vita Mike Lynch, il magnate britannico.
So this right here, again, the yacht report stated that this is these are signs for the engine room. So it's telling you to put on your earmuffs, and you can actually see a set down there. So this is the door to the engine room, and you can see the handle there. Looks like it's locked and shut, closed. This right here, apparently this is a window. This is a shattered window, even though it looks like a screen. It's just very dark. Okay, so now, okay, so remember earlier when I pointed out that orange lanyard that was attached to his camera? So now we're looking at footage through the GoPro, and notice how much clearer and how much better the visibility is now. You see him here, he's just kind of fumbling with trying to get these jacks set up. Now, this tool right here, this thing that looks like a ruler, is called a feeler gauge. I don't know if this is a tool that was brought down by the diver. There doesn't appear to be any rust on it, but a lot of times these are also stainless as well. Typically what they use feeler gauges for are for example, like the shaft on a boat has a bearing around it, and they'll stick the feeler gauge. Each one of these little ruler looking things here are actually just different thicknesses. So they'll stick the feeler gauge in there to determine what the gappage is between the shaft and the bearing. If the gap is too little or too tight, like there's very strict tolerances, and determine if the gap is too much, then it's time to like replace the bearing, etc., things like that. I'm not an expert with feeler gauges, but I have used them before. We do have to use them underwater when we're inspecting different things like on ships, etc. So this is another door. I don't know where this door is leading to, but you can see here they're jamming open that pry bar, or jamming in that pry bar, and trying to get access to that door. We believe it might be leading up to the bridge, but we're not sure. And also, just take note here, one quick thing to note. You can see the door handle is actually come off, and it's actually laying down right here. So even though this vessel here this door would actually open that way, but this vessel is laying on its right side. So yeah, just things to keep in mind, that how things are oriented underwater. And if you notice there too, it's a very subtle pan that they did with the GoPro, so we know for sure this is the GoPro footage. And not only that, but you can see the bright lights that we're getting here. We're getting a lot of lighting, so this is definitely that tray that the GoPro was on. And there you can see the diver. I believe this is the diver that we watched enter the wreck. So now they made it into the bridge. So it may have been that door that they were prying open led up to the bridge. So I can't thank the yacht report enough, because they really made this clear for us. So these instruments right here, I'll bring up another image and show you guys, but these instruments right here is a clear indication that they are in the control room. And then this door right here, I guess he has a contact who's a former engineer, and they were able to confirm that this handle position right here is locked. So this door was locked and dogged. So this watertight door was shut.
Nascondeva dei segreti, Bayesian. Potranno mai tornare a casa.
Now, what's absolutely crazy to me is that, 165 feet below the surface, diving inside of the wreck, we have two tethered divers inside of here together. I'm assuming that there's not a third in-water tender tending both of these divers inside of the wreck. So potentially they both could get fouled up inside of that wreck and be SOL, if you know what I mean. But here is evidence. I'm going to show you guys here how we know that there's two divers inside of this wreck together. Pay close attention. So this is that door. Remember, we think that they're trying to bust this door open to enter the engine room. We see there's a pry bar here. They have another pry bar jammed in the door. They already broke the door handle off. This view right here is from the GoPro that's sitting on the floor, or sitting on the wall, I guess. So pay close attention. There's diver number one. He's got his right hand right here. There's his left hand right here. He's got his hand in that hole, right? Trying to figure out what's going on. So that's his right hand, right? Now look, pay close attention. His right hand is still right here. And there's another right hand that comes over and feels inside the hole. Same finger, same glove, same everything. So so the other footage that we saw, it actually cut away before we could see that. So we know that we know that, we know that they're saying this is leaked footage or exclusive footage, but anything that they're sending out, they're going to be very precise as to what they are sending out and what they're cutting, etc. This little piece of information, that's a little tidbit that we caught. So we know that there's two divers in the wreck working together. They may have been cutting some corners in terms of safety to make sure that they get inside of this door on this dive, because if not, it's going to throw off all their other dive plans. So they might have said, hey, diver number two, go inside, be careful, but we need to get this door open. Now this is going to be back up towards the surface, and I believe this is the same duffel bag that they likely used to get those wood blocks down inside of the vessel so that they can open up that door. And in a minute here, they're going to show exactly what is all in that bag. Okay, so here's a list of items that they recovered. I actually put this through Google Translate. So this is a portable hard disk that they found in the control room. The second item was a mobile phone of the Sailor Guard Matthew Griffiths. He was one of the, I believe he was one of the survivors. And Matthew Griffiths actually posted a photo of the storm when they were in the storm from the vessel. And I'll see if I could find that for you guys. But he actually posted a photo online before all this happened. So if he's outside, well, I mean, he must not have been that worried about the storm. And we obviously know that it was a freak incident, a water spout that hit the boat. And then the third item are cell phones of crew members that they were able to find, one smartwatch, and then two hardware computers. The hardware computers, according to Yacht Report, so he believes that those are hardware computers that belong on the vessel that record data from the vessel itself. So they're just, part of this investigation, they're just trying to figure out as much info as possible and follow as many breadcrumbs and paper trails. So that's everything that the divers, essentially the Italian Navy SEALs recovered from the wreck. Now, I believe Matthew Griffiths, this was posted to his Instagram. This is what he posted during the storm here. So this is a look from the boat. This was the last footage that we have from the vessel, from anyone that was on the vessel. And that was the cell phone that they recovered in that list of items. So the Bayesian is sitting on her starboard side or the right side. And a quick tip, if you guys are ever getting confused with what's port and what's starboard, well, the majority of you guys are going to be right-handed. So if you're right-handed, that's your star player. So that's your starboard side. You're right-handed, star player, starboard side. It's all on your right. Now, the vessel is laying on her starboard side, and unfortunately, this video quality is extremely poor. This video was reported as leaked by Quarta Republica. What this video is essentially, it's first of all, you have underwater footage that is already going to be somewhat poor quality because the visibility is not great. And then this video is taken, you're recording like it's recording a laptop screen or something. So the visibility is very poor, but here you can see the diver bubbles coming up. This was likely from the Coast Guard because this was the first footage that we had. It may have been from the fire brigade. Unfortunately, that's the best wide angle footage we have. More will come out as this investigation continues, and they're actually working on salvage operations right now. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the salvage operations and why it's taking so long to get this done. This right here is, he was the captain on the Sir Robert Powell. So there you can see them photoed of the Bayesian. They were actually anchored up pretty close to them. And it's amazing that the storm struck the Bayesian but didn't strike their vessel. Yeah, so they dropped this little tender in the water and went and rescued everyone. So before we get into some of the salvage information, we're just going to go back to the U.S. Navy dive manual real quick, and I'm going to point out to you guys like the type of equipment that they're using, etc., because we want to try and figure out as much information as possible, because we're not really being provided with that information. Like I said, everything is sort of shrouded in secrecy. So we went over kind of the basics of nitrogen narcosis. Well, there is another gas that is used. It's called nitrox, or enriched air. What that is it has a higher percentage of oxygen, so it allows you to stay down much longer. You don't feel the effects of nitrogen narcosis nearly as much. But the issue with that is you can only use it it's only good to a certain depth, and there's no way that they're going to be diving that at 50 meters. So anywhere from in this range right here, 150 to 170. It's far too deep for nitrox, because you're going to have a higher concentration of oxygen entering your body. You're going to get something called oxygen toxicity. So one of the major symptoms of that is like convulsions. So yeah, so they're not going to be using nitrox. So if we look here, this is a helium oxygen mix. So this is just pure helium and oxygen. There's no air, there's no nitrogen, anything like that. Now, if they were diving this, so we have to round up, remember, to 170 feet, they can stay down there for 60 minutes, and then they're going to have 3 minutes to their first stop. So these are all the decompression stops that they have to do if they're diving helium oxygen. I would assume that they're going to spend no more than an hour down there. They could spend as little as 30 minutes, but it's really hard to do anything 10 minutes or less, which is why I don't think that these divers are diving air. I think they brought in the Special Forces Navy divers that are specially trained to dive heliox, and they could stay down there a lot longer and get a lot more work done. It's almost impossible to get anything done in a 10-minute window. I'm surprised that the fire brigade was even able to recover those bodies in 10 minutes. Now, the effects of nitrogen narcosis are actually going to be far less as well. So their motor skills are going to be much better. They're not going to be affected by the effects of nitrogen narcosis. They're not going to be feeling euphoric and drunk. They're going to be able to focus on their task at hand. Okay, so let's say that the Special Forces Navy divers spent an hour on bottom, so 60 minutes. It's going to take them, when they begin their ascent, 3 minutes and 20 seconds to get to their first stop at 70 feet. Now, they're going to be breathing a different gas mixture when they're at bottom on the wreck, okay? And then when they get to their first stop at 70 feet, now they're going to be breathing what's called a 50-50 mix. So they're going to be breathing 50% helium, 50% oxygen. They're going to be doing that at 70 feet for 7 minutes, at 60 feet for 10 minutes, at 50 feet for 10 minutes, at 50 feet for 40 minutes. And then when they come up to 30 feet, they're going to go on 100% oxygen for 33 minutes at 33 feet, and then 62 minutes at 20 feet. Now, if they did that, if they spent 10 minutes there, it's still going to be quite a bit of decompression, but it's going to be far less than if they spent an hour down there. So the longer you stay down there, just the more decompression that you have to go through. literally hours of decompression that they have to do to off-gas all of the toxic gases. We don't know which gas they were breathing, if it was air or heliox, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the two because that's what the Navy uses. So it's a little bit of speculation, but it's an educated guess. It's down to a 50-50. No pun intended. So a big question that a lot of people are having so far are, who are the divers? We have narrowed that down. It was the fire brigade, then the Coast Guard because they're in charge, and now they have the Special Forces Navy divers on bottom doing item retrieval and things of that nature, and doing the investigative work because they're qualified to do so. Now we're going to figure out what gear are they using. So we're going to the U.S. Navy Dive Manual because, like I said, they set the standards for everything, right? They set the standards. They're the ones who did all the research. Really, they set the bar when it comes to diving operations, period. So we're going to go to surface supplied air diving operations. By the way, if you're ever curious, this manual is spelled out for everyone in such a way that if you had no prior knowledge of diving, you can literally read this manual and you can know everything there is to know about diving. And you can pretty much teach yourself how to dive just based on this manual. That's how informative and how basic the information is. So, okay, so continuing on, we're just going to air diving operations because that's what the type of gear that they're going to show here. So yeah, I mean, this has all the, it has a checklist for everything that you need for each dive, all the equipment. It shows you the formulas for how to figure out air consumption and how much air that you need, how much you need for the ascent, how much you need for the descent, how much you need for the actual working dive. Everything it's pretty basic, okay? Emergency gas supply requirements. So now this right here is what they call the MK20, the Mark 20 Mod Zero mask. This is a pretty common setup for the Navy divers when they're actually doing light retrieval work. I'm sure that a helmet would actually be preferred. So what we're looking at here is the D-Vader DP. Pretty much it's a rapid response emergency. Pretty much it's a rapid response dive equipment setup. So it's designed for just to be, 1, to be mobile, 2, to be quick to set up, and 3, to be safe. And it's also supposed to be like light and just easy to deploy. So this gas right here, these bottles, these are actually going to sit on the surface and they go into this manifold. This is going to be your main set of tanks that plug into here. This is going to be your backup set of tanks that plug into here. These don't get turned on unless air runs out of these, unless these run out of air, or if a hose blows or something like that. Then you can turn this on and still have air to the diver. Then you would let the diver know, hey, we're having a situation, it's time to come up. Now remember that rope that I showed you guys earlier in the video, that braided rope? Well, that's this rope right here. And then that yellow hose plugs in to that diver's manifold that was on his shoulder. That's this guy right here. And I'll show you guys some better photos shortly, but I just want to go over a couple more things. The Bayesian is considered a wreck, so we're going to take a quick peek here at what the recommendations are, or what the requirements are for working inside of a wreck. So first of all, let's look at working around corners. Working around corners where the umbilical is likely to become fouled or line pull signals may be dissipated. A second tending diver, which remember that's the POV that we were seeing of the diver that was feeding the hose, may be sent down to 10 lines of the first diver at the obstruction and pass along any line pull signals. Line pull signals are passed on the diver's umbilical to which they pertain. So line pull signals are like our backup or last form of communication. So like worst case scenario, if we don't have voice communications, then at least we have line pull signals. That's something that everyone knows by heart, what those signals mean. So if we're not getting if we lose comms with the diver, we'll pull on that umbilical, and then he should respond back, and then we know that he's okay at least. Now, working inside a wreck. When you're working inside a wreck, the same procedure is used when working around corners is followed, where each level penetrated may require a tending diver to relay line pull signals. Ultimately, the number of tending divers deployed depends on a specific situation. Okay, so did you guys catch that? So remember when I showed you the clip of the two divers inside of the wreck working together? I highly doubt there was a third diver that was down there tending both of their lines. It's possible that there was. Maybe they did a risk assessment, but likely what happened is both of those divers went in together because they needed to get a task done, and they were working together. Sure, they were keeping an eye on each other, but that also presents a lot more risk to both of those divers. What if there was a hazard in there and they both got injured or they both got stuck? Now they're unable to get themselves out. There should be a standby diver on the boat ready to hop in if anything happens to those divers, but you know, like I said, we're not sure. Everything here is kind of difficult to get information on. This is Interspiro. They've been around for a very long time. They have the Devator mask. If you guys have ever seen the OTS Guardians, those Guardian full face masks are actually based off of these. It's sort of a copycat in a sense. So here we see the close-ups of the masks here. The mask regulator. This mask is bolted in. These masks have different attachments, so you can add, you know, a welding lens. You can attach a light to it, a camera. In most instances, you can attach to these. Okay, so we're getting a little warmer here. If you look here, this is the BCD, just like the diver was wearing. It's got twin tanks right here, and then those are plumbed in together, and he's got a on and off valve right here. This is the surface applied hose that's going down to the diver, and this is that manifold that was on the diver's shoulder. If you guys remember me pointing that out, this is that on and off switch for the bailout bottles. So the bailout bottles plug into this, and then if he runs out of air from the surface, he could turn that on. He's on scuba, and it's time to begin his ascent. Okay, and these are the same tanks that they were using. Remember, these are just bailout bottles. These are just for backup purposes. And here we could see this is the Devator complete diving system. Like I said, this is U.S. Navy approved, so it's very likely that the other naval forces are going to follow suit. And here we could see, remember that black rope that I showed you guys in the dive footage? That's this one right here, and then this. And then this rope plugs into the diver right there, and his manifold is tucked in right there. And what we're not seeing is a second cable. So this setup, this current setup right here, he doesn't have communications. So the rope that they would have, and you remember seeing the little tape marks on the umbilical. Well, this is just going to have voice communications taped in. And then from the diver that we're seeing that has the POV footage, the live feed footage of everything, he's going to have one for breathing air, one for communications, and then one for the video camera light setup. Now, it does say here that these do have communication cables. So, you know, it did look like those cables were gray. So I'm pretty sure that that's what this cable was right here. So this is addressing one of the major questions and major tasks regarding the salvage operations of, you have to keep in mind all of the oil and fuel that they need to extract from the vessel before they can refloat it, because potentially, so when they refloat the vessel, they need to right the vessel and then bring it straight up. Now, if they do that, there are thousands of gallons of fuel in here that are going to spill out and be very bad for the environment. So how do they address that? Well, there's something called hot tapping. I'm going to show you some dive footage. This is just a demonstration that's going to make it much clearer for how this all works. Okay, so now you guys have an idea of what hot tapping is like. Now we're going to show you some actual commercial diving footage of hot tapping being performed on a Salvage. So this contraption right here is actually a mag drill. It's a magnetic drill press. So these little squares right here, those are actually magnets, and this is a steel hulled vessel. So they've located where the oil tanks are on this vessel, and you know, that's one of the challenges with the Bayesian. Remember, she has an aluminum hull, so they're not going to have that luxury of being able to use a magnetic drill press like this and just stick it up on the side of the hull. They're actually going to have to come up with a way to secure a drill press like this in a better fashion. Now, if you're curious, these little handles right here actually help break the magnets free. So when the diver's ready to go, he'll just pull those magnets, and it just creates a little bit of leverage down here, and that'll break those magnets free. And what he's drilling in right here, he's tapping in the flange mounting bolts. So now he's got that drill press out of the way. The mounting bolts are all tapped in. He's placing this flange gasket. This is directly on the hole here. And so now he's taking the flange here. This is what's bolting onto the hull. And once he's got that bolted down, he's applying some marine epoxy. It cures underwater. It's called Splash Zone. It's a 50-50 marine putty. And yeah, it cures underwater, stops leaks, all that good stuff. And so, yeah, we love Splash Zone. It helps in a lot of situations. I just used it the other day, actually. So this right here is the gate valve that he's installing to the flange. And why the gate valve is important is because it's going to play a crucial role in preventing oil from spilling out before and after they pump the oil out of this tank here. So you can kind of get an idea of what it's like working as a commercial diver. It's not all it's not as glamorous sometimes as what they make it out to be, but it's still a lot of fun. A lot of times we have to work in these dark, cold waters with very limited space to access things. So now he's actually placing the hot tapping tool, which is essentially just a large drill press with a hole saw inside of it. He's mounting that onto the flange now. And once he gets that all tight and secure, now he can open up that gate valve. So remember, that valve had a plate inside of it. So he opens up that valve, the plate slides back. Now he can drill. See this handle right here? It's just like on a drill press. So now he's able to drill a hole into the hull. Now this hose right here, if you guys remember in my previous videos, I mentioned a pneumo fathometer hose. So this hose, it provides depth to the topside personnel so they can keep an eye on our depth, but it's an open-ended hose, and they can shoot air through that hose in an emergency situation. We can actually breathe off of it. We can use it to fill lift bags. We can also use it to do what he's about to do right here, which he's going to place it on this fitting and open up this valve and ensure that there's no leaks. So he's just confirming that it's got an airtight seal and there's no leaks that's going to come out here. Once that's confirmed, he shut his quarter turn valve, and now he's shutting the gate valve and removing that drill press, the hot tapping press. This right here, he's got in his hand, he's got an oil absorbent pad. So he's just cleaning up all that oil, trying to keep everything contaminated and not polluting the waters during this salvage operation. So just cleaning up everything. And then one of the things that they have to do before they send this tool back up is just save the coupon, clean off all the oil and shavings, and he'll most likely just bag that up, and then they'll send that up in a retrieval bag. Now, the next thing that he has to do, this video cuts short, but the next thing he has to do is hook up the hose and pump, and then open up that gate valve. Then they can pump out all that oil out of the wreck. So that's how they're going to get the fuel out of the Bayesian, because there's 15,000 gallon fuel tanks. So they need to pump out that fuel, and then they also need to get the oil out of there before they can begin the salvage. Okay, so we're going to be continuing this investigation. That was just part one. I know it was a lot of information. If you missed anything, or if I skipped over anything, please feel free to let me know. First and foremost, I want to thank our subscribers that left super thanks. Thank you guys so much to Gail, CR, Gabriel, and Betty Jane. It's very much appreciated. You know, like I said, I'm just a small channel right now. I appreciate that you guys are supporting me and helping me grow, and you guys are all enjoying the content. So even if you can't give a super thanks, liking, commenting, subscribing does this just the same for this channel. We're small, we're just trying to grow together, and as soon as you hit that subscribe button, you guys are part of the dive team. Now, you guys, I have literally thousands and thousands of hours of dive footage from my personal dives. I've been trying to think, like, what can I do with this footage? I think what I'm going to do, instead of just posting it to YouTube, because there's a lot of stuff on there I just don't want to just share out with everyone, is it's going to support the channel, but I think I'm going to put it on a Patreon. So if you guys would like to support the channel, and you would also like to get a glimpse into like my personal life and actual dives that I'm doing these days, then that would be a good way for you guys to see that stuff and support the channel as well. You'll also have direct access to me. We can have a group chat set up through Patreon. There's also the option to have a Discord. But let me know if you guys would be interested in that. I will be sharing some of my experiences on here with you guys, but not everything. If you want like all the access, then that's where it's going to go. The steel drum implosion will be happening soon, so stay tuned for that. If you guys have any feedback, feel free to leave it in the comment section. You guys know I'm very open to all that. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm sad that it's such a tragic event, but it's something that I feel we can all learn from. Thank you guys very much for your support, and dive safe.